1. Who was the first Portuguese sailor to discover the sea route between India and the West? When and where in India did he arrive for the first time? Answer. The first Portuguese sailor to discover the sea route between India and the West was Vasco da Gama. He arrived in Calicut, India for the first time in 1498. 2. Who was the English sailor able to move round the earth through the sea route? Answer. The English sailor who was able to move around the earth through the sea route was Sir Francis Drake. 3. Who was the English sailor who entered India for the first time with a petition letter, and when? Answer. The English sailor who entered India for the first time with a petition letter was Captain William Hawkins in 1608. 4. When and where did the East India Company initially establish? Answer. The East India Company was initially established on 31st December 1600 in London, England. 5. Write 2 objectives of the East India Company to permanently rule in India. Answer. 2 objectives of the East India Company to permanently rule in India were to establish a monopoly over trade and commerce, to gain political control over Indian territories. 6. When and where in India was the first trade center of the English established? Answer. The first trade center of the English was established in Surat, India in 1613. 7. What is Fort William? Answer. Fort William is a fort built by the British in Calcutta, now Kolkata, in 1696 to protect their trading interests. 8. Which were the 2 main divisions of the British administrative period of dependent India? Answer. The 2 main divisions of the British administrative period of dependent India were the Company Rule, 1757 to 1858, and the Crown Rule, 1858 to 1947. 9. Who, when, and with what objective was the Gulf of India Act enacted? Answer. The Gulf of India Act was enacted by the British Parliament in 1858 with the objective of transferring the powers of the East India Company to the British Crown, thus bringing India directly under British rule. 10. When and with what objective was the Indian Councils Act enacted? Answer. The Indian Councils Act was enacted in 1861 with the objective of including Indian members in the legislative councils and expanding the role of Indians in the administration. One. What were the efforts made by the British to establish trade relations with India? Analyze the steps by which they succeeded. Answer. The British made several efforts to establish trade relations with India. They obtained a royal charter from Queen Elizabeth I in 1600, which granted them exclusive rights to trade with the East. They sent expeditions to India, with the first one led by Captain William Hawkins in 1608, who arrived at the court of Mughal Emperor Jahangir with a petition for trade rights. After initial resistance, they managed to establish a trade center in Surat in 1613, followed by agreements with local rulers. They gradually built fortified settlements, secured trade concessions, and established a strong naval presence, allowing them to dominate trade. 2. How did the East India Company establish 3 trade centers at 3 important places in India? Answer. The East India Company established 3 trade centers in India through the following steps. Surat. In 1613, the company established its first factory in Surat after receiving permission from the Mughal emperor. Madras, Chennai. In 1639, the company established a second trade center in Madras by acquiring land from a local ruler, and they fortified the settlement by building Fort St. George. Calcutta, Kolkata. In 1690, the company established a third trade center in Calcutta by obtaining trading rights from the Nawab of Bengal, later fortifying the settlement with Fort William. Number 3. Who was the most remarkable person of the East India Company to pave the way for the establishment of British imperialism in India? Write with 4 arguments about his strategies to lay the foundation stone of the British Empire. Answer. The most remarkable person of the East India Company to pave the way for British imperialism in India was Robert Clive. His strategies included victory at Plassey, 1757. Clive's victory over the Nawab of Bengal in the Battle of Plassey marked the beginning of British political control in India. Establishing British control, he secured the Diwani rights in Bengal, allowing the British to collect revenue, which was crucial for expanding British influence. Military alliances. Clive formed strategic alliances with Indian rulers and local leaders, which helped the British to consolidate power. Administrative reforms. Clive introduced administrative reforms that strengthened the company's control over Bengal, paving the way for further expansion. Write the causes for the outbreak of the Sepoy Mutiny. Answer. The causes for the outbreak of the Sepoy Mutiny included religious and cultural insensitivity, the use of greased cartridges rumored to be made from cow and pig fat offended both Hindu and Muslim soldiers, economic exploitation, heavy taxation, land revenue policies, and economic hardship faced by Indian peasants and artisans fueled discontent. Military grievances. Indian soldiers, sepoys, were unhappy with their pay, conditions of service, and lack of opportunities for promotion. Political annexations. The British policy of annexing Indian states, such as the doctrine of lapse, caused resentment among Indian rulers and the general population. 5. Mention 4 important results of the Sepoy Mutiny. Answer. 4 important results of the Sepoy Mutiny were: end of company rule. The British Crown took direct control of India, ending the rule of the East India Company. Queen Victoria's proclamation. The proclamation promised non-interference in religious matters and equal treatment under the law. Reorganization of the Army. The British reorganized the Indian Army to prevent future mutinies by increasing the number of British soldiers and dividing Indian soldiers along ethnic lines. Increased racial tensions. The mutiny led to increased mistrust and racial tensions between the British and Indians, which influenced subsequent colonial policies. 6. Mention 4 administrative changes brought through the Govt of India Act. Answer. 4 administrative changes brought through the Govt of India Act were: transfer of power. The administration of India was transferred from the East India Company to the British Crown. Establishment of the Viceroy. The position of Governor General was replaced by the Viceroy, who represented the British Crown in India. Introduction of the Indian Civil Service, ICS. The ICS was reorganized to administer the country effectively under direct British control. Centralized administration. The Act centralized administrative power in the hands of the British, reducing the autonomy of Indian rulers. Write about 2 main reforms of Lord Canning. Answer. 2 main reforms of Lord Canning were: introduction of the Indian Councils Act, 1861. This reform allowed Indian representatives to be included in legislative councils, marking the beginning of legislative reforms. Establishment of universities. Lord Canning initiated the establishment of universities in Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras in 1857 to promote higher education in India. 8. Write 2 merits and 2 demerits of the Indian Councils Act. Answer: merits. It allowed limited Indian participation in the legislative process, giving Indians a voice in governance. It marked the beginning of constitutional reforms in British India, laying the groundwork for future political changes. Demerits. The Indian representation was minimal and largely symbolic, with no real power or influence over decisions. The Act maintained British dominance and control over important administrative matters, offering only token reforms. 9. Discuss the changes occurred through the local self-government during the British period. Answer: the introduction of local self-government during the British period brought several changes. Decentralization. Powers were decentralized to local bodies like municipalities and district boards, allowing for limited self-governance. Introduction of elections. Local self-government introduced the concept of elections, enabling some Indians to participate in governance at the local level. Improved civic amenities. Local bodies were responsible for providing basic civic amenities like sanitation, water supply, and education, leading to some improvements in urban areas. Limited autonomy. Despite these changes, local self-government was limited in scope, with real power remaining in the hands of British officials. 10. How were the Indians included in the civil services? Discuss the growth of these services. Answer: Indians were included in the civil services through the following developments. Competitive examinations. The British introduced competitive examinations for the Indian Civil Service, ICS, in 1853, which were initially held in London. This allowed a small number of educated Indians to join the civil services. Reforms and reservations. Over time, reforms were introduced to allow more Indians to enter the civil services, and reservations were made for Indian candidates in certain positions. Growth of services. The ICS grew in importance as it became the backbone of British administration in India, with Indian officers eventually holding key positions, though the highest posts were still reserved for British officers. 11. Mention 3 differences between the civil services of British-occupied India and independent India. Answer: recruitment process. Under British rule, the ICS recruitment process was centralized in London, while in independent India, the civil services exams are conducted by the Union Public Service Commission, UPSC, within India. Representation. During British rule, the civil services were dominated by British officers with limited Indian representation. In independent India, the civil services are predominantly staffed by Indian citizens. Role and accountability. The civil services under British rule were primarily focused on maintaining colonial control and enforcing British policies. In independent India, the civil services are accountable to the Indian government and are responsible for implementing policies aimed at national development. Hello, amazing viewers. I just wanted to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for watching my videos and supporting my channel. Your support means the world to me, and I'm so grateful to have you as part of this journey. If you enjoyed the content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more exciting videos, like this video if it brought value to you, and share it with your friends and family who might enjoy it too. Your support helps the channel grow and reach more awesome people like you. Thank you once again for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.